From John James to Peter Furler and then to Michael Tait, each frontman of the Newsboys has left a powerful mark on Christian music. But underneath the music, the tours, and the stage lights, a painful pattern has emerged, a battle many never see, the crushing weight of living a double life. Today, most fans recognize Peter Furler or Michael Tait as the faces of Newsboys. But long before their names graced headlines and album covers, there was John James, the original frontman, the voice that helped define the band's early identity, and the fact that his name has faded from public memory speaks volumes, not just about fame, but about the quiet erasure of those who crumble under its weight. When Peter Furler and George Perdikis founded the Newsboys in Australia in 1985, they needed a lead singer who could carry their message with passion. Peter turned to his best friend, John James. Together, they formed the core of a band that would soon rise to international acclaim. John not only sang lead vocals, he co-wrote the band's early songs and led them into the limelight. By the time the album Not Ashamed dropped in 1992, Newsboys had become a rising force in Christian contemporary music. And John was front and center, leading the charge. But behind the spotlight, fame was taking a toll, a steep one. In 1997, the band suddenly announced that John James was stepping away, reportedly to return to local ministry in Australia. For fans, the news came as a shock. Why would their beloved frontman leave just as the band was reaching its peak? The truth, as it turned out, was far more painful than the press releases led on. Years later, in a deeply revealing 2007 interview, John opened up about what had really driven him to step away. The fame, the crowds, the constant pressure to perform, rather than lift him up, it was slowly destroying him. Behind the scenes, John was drowning in addiction, struggling with alcohol, cocaine, and depression. While he preached purity and Christian values on stage, off stage he was spiraling. He spoke openly about drinking a carton or two of beer daily, starting his mornings with a six-pack and staying intoxicated all day. And yet, he still got on stage, still performed, still wore the mask. He described the lifestyle as schizophrenic, one moment being adored by thousands, the next feeling empty and ashamed. The disconnect between who he was publicly and who he had become privately was ripping him apart. He was, as he put it, losing himself. But the addiction wasn't the only issue. John admitted to infidelity, engaging in multiple affairs that ultimately shattered his marriage. His wife left him, taking their eldest daughter and returning to Australia. The man who once stood on stage preaching Christ had become unrecognizable to himself. When asked whether the other band members knew what he was going through, John didn't dodge the question. His response was brutally honest. "We can see stuff, but sometimes we don't want to admit it," he said. "We're part of a big machine. There are families involved, careers, money. Sometimes we choose not to see it, even when it's obvious." And that statement echoes painfully across the industry today, because this isn't just a John James story. It's the story of a system, of a machine that values profit over people, performance over health, and image over integrity. John described a lifestyle of excess, motorcycles, four-wheelers, gadgets, toys, not just one for him, but for everyone in the band. New gear, put it on the card. Lavish living became the norm. They worked hard and played harder, but that play masked deep brokenness, and it all came crashing down. John James was forced to leave Newsboys in 1997, just as they began working on their next major album, Step Up to the Microphone. His fall from grace was silent, buried under the noise of press statements and PR strategies, but his story remained, a cautionary tale buried beneath the shine of success. When the truth finally came to light, it wasn't because the Newsboys told us. No, the public was handed a carefully crafted narrative that John James was stepping away to pursue local church ministry in Australia. That we now know was a lie. The real reason? John was drowning in addiction, in depression, in the pressure that comes with carrying a public image that didn't reflect his private pain. His life was unraveling, but instead of facing that truth, the band, his band, swept it under the rug because protecting the brand was more important than saving the man. The truth didn't fit the image they wanted to sell. So they buried it. And now, decades later, we're watching the same pattern repeat, only this time it's Michael Tait, a man who for over 15 years has been the voice and face of one of Christian music's most iconic bands. A man who has now come forward with a confession that should shake every fan, every follower, every Christian who's watched from the sidelines. Michael Tait has admitted to living a double life, a life filled with reckless behavior, addiction, and deception. In his own words, he said, "Recent reports of my reckless and destructive behavior, including alcohol abuse and sexual activity, are sadly largely true." He didn't sugarcoat it. He didn't spin it. He called it what it is, sin. And yet we have to ask the uncomfortable question, was this really a secret? You can't live in close quarters with people, tour with them, perform with them, share buses and dressing rooms for years, and no one notices the signs. Addiction doesn't whisper, it roars. The mood swings, the physical toll, the changes in behavior, they're impossible to miss if you're truly paying attention. So, were the other band members truly unaware? Or were they just unwilling to risk the fame, the money, the success that came with keeping things quiet? Because let's be honest, when your brand is built on a polished image and squeaky clean testimony, the pressure to ignore red flags is immense. And that's what's so tragic here. This isn't just about Michael Tait. It's about a system, a machine, one that prioritizes revenue over repentance and image over integrity. Many fans are now calling for accountability, not just for Michael, but for the band. Because if they saw the signs and chose silence, then they were complicit. And the silence, it's deafening. Michael's confession, powerful as it may be, is also calculated. It comes at a moment when rumors had already boiled over. The timing, the wording, it feels like damage control. And perhaps in his mind, it's also an attempt to protect the band, to shield them from deeper scrutiny. But by doing that, he may also be protecting the very system that enabled the silence, that protected the money. Because make no mistake, this is a money machine. The tours, the albums, the merchandise, the ministry partnerships, they generate millions. And when your image is your currency, the truth becomes inconvenient. And that's why this moment matters. We have to stop idolizing Christian celebrities. We have to stop treating public figures like Michael as if they're above the struggles that plague the rest of us, because fame doesn't sanctify and talent doesn't absolve. If anything, the fame makes the fall harder and the silence makes the fall inevitable. We need to ask the tough questions, not to tear down, but to rebuild with honesty, with accountability, with truth. Because if we don't, this won't be the last time